You're listening to The Manning Report with your host, James David Manning. The news behind the headlines.
I have an article I want to read regarding a story that was broken first by Reuters newspaper and BuzzFeed as well. And I reported on Jerry Falwell Jr. of Liberty University being involved in a $1.8 million payoff to some Hispanic fella down in Miami. And that the payoff was hush money that was orchestrated by Michael Cohen, who was the fixer for Tribulation Trump. That Michael Cohen arranged a $1.8 million payoff to some guy who allegedly had photos of either Jerry Falwell Jr.'s wife or Jerry Falwell Jr. that were either naked or embarrassing. We don't know exactly what is happening. We know that the actor Tom Arnold discussed this with Michael Cohen before he was sent to Otisville Prison here in New York State. But I'm going to read the article because there's something going on, and you're going to see the reason why Jerry Falwell Jr. decided to endorse Tribulation Trump, the first of the evangelicals with a big name, and then a lot of the other evangelicals followed suit. But it may have been because of a bribe. It may have been because Tribulation Trump had some naked photos of Jerry Falwell Jr.'s wife or something, or Jerry Falwell Jr.'s wife involved with another man. We don't really know, and I can put allegedly, but there's something going on because there's a direct trail of money that can be transferred. And Jerry Falwell Jr. himself has admitted to giving this unknown Hispanic fella down in Miami $1.8 million. He just gave it to him and said he made it as a loan to set up a hotel down in Miami South Beach. And that in order to get this hotel going, he needed some $3.4 million to get it. And the Carter Bank and Trust, which is a trust that a bank which Liberty University uses in Virginia, also made a loan to purchase a mortgage in South Beach, Florida, and the loan ostensibly was influenced by the power of Jerry Falwell Jr., who runs a lot of money through the Carter Bank and Trust. So there's something going on. So I'm going to take the time to read it. I want to set that up that way, but let me just start reading. And the article by the New York Times is called "The Evangelical, the Po' Boy, and the Comedian and Michael Cohen." Jerry Falwell Jr. defied expectations when he supported Donald J. Trump in 2016. Now details are emerging about behind the scenes money maneuvering before the endorsement. And it starts with in Miami Beach. Senator Ted Cruz was running neck and neck with Tribulation Trump in Iowa just before the caucus in 2016. But his campaign was expecting a last minute boost from a powerful endorser, being Jerry Falwell Jr. Mr. Falwell was chancellor of one of the nation's largest Christian colleges, Liberty University, and a son of the Reverend Jerry Falwell Sr., the televangelist and co-founder of the modern religious right. Months earlier, Mr. Falwell had provided Liberty's basketball arena for Mr. Cruz's former presidential announcement and required the student body attend, giving the Texas Republican a guaranteed audience of thousands of cheering young religious conservatives. With the caucus now fast approaching, the senator's father, Rafael Cruz, an evangelical pastor who had taken the lead in wooing Mr. Falwell, alerted the campaign that Mr. Falwell had pledged to endorse his son, Ted Cruz. But when the time came for the endorsement, Mr. Falwell rocked the Cruz campaign and grabbed the attention of the entire political world, and he endorsed Tribulation Trump instead, becoming one of the first major evangelical leaders to get behind the thrice married, insult hurdling real estate mogul, long odds presidential bid. Mr. Falwell, who was not a minister and spent years as a lawyer and real estate developer, said his endorsement was based on Mr. Trump's business experience and leadership qualities. A person close to Mr. Falwell said he made the decision after consultation with individuals whose opinions he respects. But a far more complicated narrative is emerging about the behind-the-scenes maneuvering in the months before the important endorsement. The backstory, in true Trump tabloid fashion, features the friendship between Mr. Falwell, his wife, and a former pool attendant at the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami Beach. The family's investment also in a gay-friendly youth hostel purported sexually revealing photographs involving the Falwells, and an attempted hush money arrangement engineered by the president's former fixer, Michael Cohen. The revelations have risen from a lawsuit filed against the Falwells in Florida. The investigation into Mr. Cohen by federal prosecutors in New York, and a gonzo-style tactics of the comedian and actor Tom Arnold. Over the last 2 years, Mr. Arnold has fashioned himself as an anti-Trump sleuth and crusader, working to dig up evidence of past malfeasance on television and in social media. And in that role, Mr. Arnold befriended Mr. Cohen, Michael Cohen, Trump's fixer, who had lately became a vivid, if not entirely reliable, narrator of the Trump phenomenon, and then recorded him describing his effort to buy and bury embarrassing photographs involving the Falwells. That attempt, Mr. Cohen says on the recording, came months before he brought Mr. Falwell to the table for Tribulation Trump. Until then, he adds, none of the evangelicals wanted to support Trump. This thing's getting this hotel that's being purchased and all this behind the scenes, and all of a sudden, rather than endorsing Ted Cruz, whose father was an evangelical pastor, now Jerry Falwell, out of the blue, endorses Tribulation Trump, and it rocked the political world. Let's continue to read. There is no evidence that Mr. Falwell's endorsement was part of a quid pro quo arrangement by Michael Cohen. Indeed, the relationship, if any, between the endorsement and the photo episode remains unclear. And it is, I don't know, we haven't seen the photos, they haven't surfaced, but there's all this banter going on about some photos about Jerry Falwell Jr.'s wife, or about Jerry Falwell Jr., or about this pool attendant that worked at the Fontainebleau Hotel, and we haven't seen anything yet. But the New York Times would not be printing this unless this was a valid story. And Reuters has also reported it, and BuzzFeed as well. And it goes on, and they added another layer to one of the enduring curiosities of the Trump era, and the support the president has received from evangelical Christians who have traditionally demanded that their political leaders exhibit family values and moral character. Now, you know the thing that's so interesting, about this event? Jerry Falwell Sr., the founder of the Moral Majority and the leader of the Christian conservative right, a televangelist of extraordinary heights that he reached. And the word moral majority threatened the Democrats, it threatened the liberals, it threatened anybody running against someone that was allegedly a conservative Christian or Republican. For his son, Jerry Falwell Jr., to now endorse, now check this out, check this out. For Jerry Falwell Jr.'s son to turn around after claiming that we will not have any president who doesn't have the highest morals, we'll not have any leader, any senator, any person representing America in a political sphere, according to Jerry Falwell Sr., the moral majority, right conservative movement. Everybody had to be squeaky clean. Everybody had to be on the up and up. So for his son to endorse Donald Trump, it rocked the world. Donald Trump is the most degenerate. I mean, he's just the opposite of what Jerry Falwell Sr. preached for years. Donald Trump is just the opposite of what the moral majority was founded for. And, you know, it was able to establish major political moves with Pat Robertson and the 700 Club and the Southern Baptists and their candidates for presidency. It was a major move, and everybody had to be squeaky clean. So for Jerry Falwell Jr. to turn around and endorse Tribulation Trump, it would be like me turning around and endorsing Al Sharpton. I mean, it's just antithetical to anything that the Christian right, that the Southern Baptists, that the conservative movement was about for so many years, the moral majority. And now Jerry Falwell Jr. endorses this degenerate Tribulation Trump. Why? What does Trump have on Jerry Falwell Jr. that made him ditch Ted Cruz and endorse, in the strongest terms, Tribulation Trump? There's something going on. There is no evidence, as I read as well, about the endorsement. We don't have that yet. We don't have photographs, but I believe we're going to get them. But by the time Republicans cast their first vote in 2016, Tribulation Trump was starting to show surprising strength among white evangelicals. But with Mr. Falwell serving as the torchbearer of his father's legacy, his endorsement became a permission slip for deeply religious conservatives who were attracted by Mr. Trump's promises to make America great again, but weary of his well-known history of infidelity, his previous support of abortion rights, and his admission that he had never asked God for forgiveness. These white evangelical Southern Baptist, Billy Graham types, you know, Franklin Graham, they were very suspicious of Trump. Very suspicious. To Jerry Falwell steps up as a torchbearer. Let's read more. For those, the more fundamental variant of evangelism, the Falwell family and the Falwell endorsement are an important factor, said Jim Guth, a political science professor at Furman University, who has long studied evangelical politics. Mr. Cruz still managed to win in Iowa, but Tribulation Trump soon won South Carolina with strong evangelical support, sending him on to a solid path towards the nomination. 3 years later, Mr. Falwell remains an unwavering Trump supporter. Last month, he went so far as to suggest that the president deserved an extended term of reparations for time lost to the Mueller investigation. In turn, he has had entree to the White House, providing input on education policies that stand to benefit Liberty University. Mr. Falwell declined to comment for this article. Mr. Falwell has said that there were no compromising photographs, and the person close to them who would speak only on the condition of anonymity said the Falwells did not know anything about Mr. Cohen's alleged efforts on their behalf. Mr. Falwell's endorsement of Tribulation Trump, the person said, was made after careful consideration. Mr. Cohen said it did not try to exert any inappropriate pressure. You know, again, so what Jerry Falwell is doing is saying that Michael Cohen didn't have anything to do as a fixer, that Michael Cohen didn't have anything to do. And we're going to get to the segment in just a moment about this $1.8 million. Where did Jerry Falwell Jr. get $1.8 million he can give to a 25-year-old Hispanic fella down in Florida? Why? Why? And the bank records show they can't hide the bank records. They can't hide the Carter a bank and trust company in Virginia that the $3.4 million also went to the same person to buy a hotel. Why? Why? Why is it that $5.2 million was given to a 25-year-old pool attendant in Miami? All at the statement of Jerry Falwell Jr. Why? What's this 25-year-old got on Jerry Falwell Jr.? Well, let's read some more. Mr. Trump lacked the religious bona fides to those who typically fill the school's speakers lineup, but he was a star at the top-rated Apprentice show, reality show, and Mr. Falwell admired his career in real estate. As it happened, the Falwell family was exploring a real estate venture on their own. Earlier that year, Mr. Falwell and his wife, Becky, had stayed at the Fontainebleau Hotel in Florida. This is the grand dame of the Miami Beach. It is a massive hotel. The hotel be seen, and a somewhat unlikely vacation spot for the chancellor of the university, whose students' code prohibit short pants, short skirts, the co-ed dorm visits, and sex outside of biblically ordained marriage. They have to swear to that and sign a statement to become a student at Liberty University. You can't wear short skirts. You have to sign a statement saying that you will not have sex outside of, this is the moral majority school, right? And yet, Jerry Falwell Jr. and his wife Becky are staying at the Fontainebleau Hotel, where people walk around naked. Well, not. Some of the women walk around topless, and the swimming suits can get skimpy. You can see the size of that swimming pool. They've got a massive swimming pool there at that Fontainebleau hotel. But at any rate, and people are walking around. So why was Jerry Falwell Jr., who makes his students, his girls, say they will not wear short skirts, what were they doing there at that swimming pool? Anyway, so we're trying to figure that out. It says here that the Falwell struck up a conversation with one of those pool attendants, right? A fellow by the name of Giancarlo Granda. Giancarlo Granda. Let me get these names right. Mr. Granda, then 21 years old, right? And the son of immigrants from Cuba and Mexico, was working at the hotel. Put that hotel up back up once again. He's working at the hotel while studying finance at Florida International University. This 21-year-old man, right, was working at the hotel. Now the Falwells, according to the person close to them, were impressed with Mr. Grande's ambition. He's a 21-year-old pool attendant, right? Soon he was hiking and water skiing with them in Virginia. Within months, they were offering to help him get started in business in Florida. Unsure how to capitalize on the offer, but Mr. Grande consulted a close high school friend, Jesus Fernandez Jr., whose father, Jesus Fernandez Sr., had worked in Miami real estate for decades. The Fernandez would later assert. Together, they directed Mr. Grande to a South Beach youth hostel that was for sale. The building also housed a restaurant and a liquor store. The Miami hostel is known as one of the best budget party hostels in South Beach. Credit angel Valentine makes a statement for the New York Times. Mr. Falwell and his wife agreed to help finance the purchase. There's a 21-year-old guy that Jerry Falwell Jr. and his wife Becky meets at the Fontainebleau Hotel. He's 21 years old. Next thing you know, Jerry Falwell is inviting the fellow to come to Virginia. They're hiking and skiing together. They're having dinner parties together. There's a 21-year-old Mexican, a 21-year-old Cuban, for crying out loud. All right, let's read more. So Mr. Falwell, I think we have this as an article. Mr. Falwell and his wife agreed to help finance the purchase after a meeting in Florida with Mr. Grande. The real estate agents, the younger Mr. Fernandez and his father, who was facing a $34 million bankruptcy. Negotiations were underway when Mr. Trump visited Liberty, and the Falwells invited Mr. Grande to fly up for the occasion. A photo taken on a private plane reviewed by the New York Times shows him holding a copy of Trump, The Art of the Deal. Ms. Falwell introduced Mr. Trump to Liberty University students as one of the greatest visionaries of our time. Would his father have done that? Would Jerry Falwell have said that about Tribulation Trump? I don't think so. Anyway, the Falwells' involvement came to light in a 2017 political article by Brandon Ambrosino, a Liberty School graduate. He reported that the hostel featured a sign on its front gate declaring its house rules: no soliciting, fundraising, politics, salesmen, or religion. And inside the Falwells' hostel, the stench of general decay and cigarette smoke is overpowering. Mr. Ambrosino wrote, tourism pamphlets included one for Tootsie's Cabaret, 74,000 square foot of adult entertainment and full nudity. On a recent overnight visit, now this is Jerry Falwell's hotel, right? Or at least he gave this young man the money to buy this hotel where you can get full nudity. I mean, all this stuff is going on, right? Is this the Mara majority? Is this a Southern Baptist that his father knew? On a recent overnight visit, the sign forbidding politics and religion was gone, and there were no visible flyers for the adult clubs. The hostel was tidy and relatively quiet, common for this time of the year. Miami is off season. But real estate records showed, I think we have this as well, Mr. Engineer, real estate records show that the LLC called Alton Hotel bought the hostel and its building for $4.7 million in cash. Within weeks, Alton Hostel secured a $3.8 million mortgage from Carter Bank and Trust, the Virginia-based bank the Falwells had long used to finance and expand Liberty University. The source of Alton Hostel's initial full cash payment is not known, but Mr. Falwell would later say in a sworn affidavit that his family's financial contribution to the deal amounted to a loan of $1.8 million to a 21-year-old to buy a sleazy hotel. Okay, all right. Jerry Falwell Jr. gives a 21-year-old $1.8 million to buy a sleazy hotel, right? He admits that he did it. He admits that he did it. This is absolutely incredible, including $800,000 above that for renovations. The Falwells' son, Jerry Falwell III, who goes by the name Trey and was 23 at the time, was listed as manager of the LLC, and Mr. Grande was added later as a co-manager. In his affidavit, Mr. Falwell said his wife was also a member of the LLC. So let's recap here. All right, what's going on with Jerry Falwell Jr.? What's happening here? This is not his father's ministry. This is not his father's evangelism. This is not his father's style. What's happening here? Let me tell you what I think. We don't have the photos, but I believe it's more than photos. Remember Jeff Bezos and David had gotten some photos of Jeff Bezos and his girlfriend sending photos back and forth, and they threatened to expose them, and Jeff Bezos didn't pay up, and the deal was just dropped. But there's something going on with this Mr. Grande. There's something going on here with him. I think it's more than photos. He's 21 years old. He was a pool attendant at the Fontainebleau. Jerry Falwell Jr. and his wife are vacationing at the Fontainebleau. And now he's become friends with a 21-year-old boy. Why? Why? What's going on? And since that time, he's been able to finance this 21-year-old with money to buy a $4.7 million hotel there in South Beach. If you've ever been to South Beach, you know what it's like. And Jerry Falwell Jr. gave him $1.8 million of his own money, plus provided $800,000 more for the renovations of that flop house hotel. Why? I mean, I had to meet somebody to give me $1.8 million just because I'm a pool attendant. Why? But put this picture back up again. It is said also further in this article that Becky Falwell, who is a looker, they say she's a very good-looking woman and she's got a nice figure. Her face looks as hard as an ice pick to me. I don't see anything good-looking about her, but they say she's got an extraordinary body. Now put the picture of the young Mr. Granda back up again, Mr. Engineer, as well. He seems a handsome young man riding on a private. Here's a 21-year-old Cuban, right, now riding on a private plane. They sent a private plane down to Florida to pick this boy up, to bring him to Lynchburg, Virginia. What's going on? What's happening? I think you've figured it out by now. I think you know there's something happening. New York Times would not have reported this. Reuters News Service and BuzzFeed would not have reported it. And this has been going on now for some time. Let me sum up by saying this. Here's what I think has happened. Somehow or another, either Jerry Falwell Jr.'s wife has been involved in a sexual relationship with this young 21-year-old, handsome Cuban, and they're trying to cover it up. They're trying to cover it up. And the extent of them trying to cover it up meant that Jerry Falwell Jr. had to depart greatly from what his father believed, because Jerry Falwell Jr. was all set and had already told everybody he's going to endorse Ted Cruz in the 2016 Iowa caucus. He was going to endorse Ted Cruz. But when obviously the information surfaced that Becky Falwell had been involved in a sexual tryst with Mr. Granada, all bets were off. Then Trump swoops in and says, you endorse me or Michael Cohen, and David Becker, who's got the photograph, David Becker of the National Enquirer, you got that right, you heard me read that. David Becker, who now has the photos, are going to print the photos and the story of Becky Falwell in a sexual encounter with this pool attendant there in the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami Beach. Immediately, Jerry Falwell Jr. drops his endorsement of Ted Cruz, which shocked the world, and endorses Tribulation Trump, and has been supporting Tribulation Trump ever since, and has not stepped back. Now, further on in the article, a large number of students left Liberty University when Jerry Falwell Jr. endorsed Trump because he's antithetical. He's anti-everything. They sign a pledge to live a chaste life, no sex outside of marriage, no short skirts, no liquor, no drinking. They sign a pledge not to smoke. And now Jerry Falwell Jr. is endorsing Tribulation Trump. The students left. And one of the finance managers and an alumnus of the school as well, who was also a public information person for Liberty University, resigned in protest and left as well. A lot of people left the school and left Jerry Falwell, but he's sticking with Trump. Why? But you know, the truth about the matter is that all of this is going to come out one way or the other. Now, so far, David Becker has not released the photos or have not printed the story, but it's going to come out. Tom Arnold, you remember him, the comedian. You just go back to him. Michael Cohen told Tom Arnold about it, and Tom Arnold is now told the world about it. Michael Cohen is kind of backing up on the fact that it happened. But Tom Arnold, who considers himself a sleuth and a crusader against Trump, has dug up this dirt, and not so much on Trump, but on Jerry Falwell Jr. Let me tell you what I believe, that this story is going to break wide open. This was reported just yesterday in the New York Times. I covered this story going back a month ago. When it breaks again, we're going to either know about the photos, we're going to know about what really went on with this 21-year-old and Becky Falwell, whether they had a sexual relationship or what. But whatever it was, It has cost Jerry Falwell Jr. $2.5 million of his own cash, and he had to sign as co-signer to the Carter Bank and Trust for another $4.3 million. So Jerry Falwell Jr. is on the hook for nearly $7 million to keep this story quiet. And it wasn't an investment in a school, it wasn't an investment in a church, it wasn't the building of a new church or building of a new religious institution. It was an investment in a hostel, in a flop joint, in a hostel hotel where all kinds of seedy things went on inside that hotel, including announcement about a cabaret where there's public nudity, and there's all kind of other things that go on inside that flop hotel. That Liberty University has invested, and Jerry Falwell Jr. have put up $7 million. And by the way, you say it's a flop hotel, $7 million is nothing to sneeze at. It's on South Beach, and it's in Miami. And everything on South Beach is extremely expensive. I think that's probably cheap, because they got a lot of real cheap hotels there on South Beach. They got some really extravagant ones there as well. It's gonna break. And when it breaks, it's going to take down the Southern Baptists and the evangelicals and white Christians. It's going to take them down. It's going to break. There are enough people out there now who are snooping around, New York Times reporter, Reuters reporter, BuzzFeed reporter. They're snooping around trying to get those photos or trying to get the depths of the story. It's going to break. And when it breaks, it's going to expose the Southern Baptists, because you remember I read in the article that most evangelicals would not have touched Trump until Jerry Falwell Jr. first did it. Then Franklin Graham got on board. Robert Jeffers of the First Baptist Church of Dallas got on board. And then the whole Southern Baptist cadre got on board. But Jerry Falwell Jr. was the torch bearer of this. It's going to break. No, this will not be hidden. And New York Times will not be sticking their neck out with Tribulation Trump calling them the failing New York Times, reporting this story at length. It's 8 pages, 12 pages long. Where did they not have, it's going to break. And when it does, white Christians going to be exposed as some of the biggest hypocrites that the world has ever seen. So the reason why I'm spending all this time today on just this one event, because it is massive. You've heard me talk about evangelicals. You've heard me rail at the Southern Baptists. You've heard me ask them, why the hell y'all doing this? Why? Why y'all doing this? And now we know. Tribulation Trump has got a hook into Jerry Falwell Jr. And David Becker has got the photos. Pecker, rather. I said Becker. David Pecker has got the photos. And he's got the story. There's an old proverb. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. This thing is going to get uglier. And it's going to drop at a time to also bring great injury to Tribulation Trump. But when this story breaks about Jerry Falwell Jr. and his wife having sex with a 21-year-old handsome Cuban, the Southern Baptists can hang it up. It's over with. And now he has been treated like royalty, given a private plane to fly anywhere he wants to fly. Lord have mercy. For full disclosure, I have to tell you that Elizabeth and I stayed at the Fontainebleau as well. Many years ago, we were there. It isn't a very auspicious place, but we were able to get a good deal. There you can shop the internet and you get great deals on hotel stays. And we stayed there. We were out by the pool. But I can tell you this, and Elizabeth will verify, we did not put on any shorts. Elizabeth didn't put on any swimsuit. She wore pants the whole time. We went out, we sat by the pool. We actually sat out in one of the cabanas and had some meal, had some hamburgers and tuna salad. They have all these little places where you can eat. And we did that. I wore sandals. I didn't wear short pants and a shirt, something like what I have on today. We did not unrobe there at that hotel, but we stayed there because in my earlier days when I was burglarizing places, I used to stay at the Fontainebleau as well. That would be my hangout when I was burglarizing houses on Miami Beach. So we thought we'd go back there again. We're waiting on this story to break. And when it does, all hell's going to break loose in the Southern white evangelicals. And it's just going to be an explosive event. I'm James David Manning, everybody. I'm the Lord's servant.